Hey, Misha here. Welcome to part 2 of John Wayne Gacy, the Killer Clown. Last week we left off in 1967, where John is testing young men to make sure that they aren't falling away from their morals, while also claiming that this is the perfect time in his life right now when he has 2 little kids, but in reality it's because his dad apologized for all of the abuse, is my guess. So, it's still 1967. While it's not public knowledge at this point, John is engaging in drug use, pornography, prostitution, and he and his wife are swinging, and not the kind of swinging on a swing set. They become swingers. Not great activities for someone who is on the board of directors for a civic organization such as the JCs. Gacy begins approaching young men and testing the limits truly to see how far they will go and how far he personally is willing to take it. So at first, he stops and lets them go without harming them. He just takes them home. It's a slow process of his becoming like braver and going farther until he just stops releasing them altogether. Later the same year, speaking of going too far, he sexually assaults a 15-year-old boy, the son of a fellow JC. He lures the boy with what becomes one of his staple moves, the promise of alcohol, drugs, and the most enticing for these young men, heterosexual pornographic films. Gacy convinces the intoxicated minor to engage in reciprocal sexual acts. This becomes a go-to move for Gacy, and he utilizes this many times on many young men over the course of several months. When these young men refuse or act weird about it, he falls back on this ridiculous lie. Get this. He says that he is being paid by a research company, that he works for a scientific research company who compensates him for conducting homosexual experiments. And the boys who participate will each receive $50 for each interaction with him. Yikes. The year is 1968. The young boy he assaulted the year before finally tells his dad, who then immediately goes to the police, of course. Gacy is charged accordingly. He lies his butt off and deflects the entire time. Many of his fellow JCs support him, actually, but he is nevertheless indicted. A few months later, he pays an employee of his to assault the victim. Like just rough him up a bit or whatever, in an attempt to convince him or intimidate him to not testify. This falls apart, though. The boy he pays rolls over on him, and the prosecution adds witness intimidation to the charges. Haha, dirtbag. As part of his trial, Gacy is ordered to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. He is evaluated for nearly 3 weeks by 2 different doctors who conclude he has issues, sociopathy and/or psychopathy. No kidding. They rule that he is unlikely to benefit from any sort of treatment and will continue to clash with society, and that he is competent to stand trial. He ends up pleading guilty, to 1 count and receives 10 years in prison. But he's such a good prisoner that he's released after a short 18 months. His wife files for divorce the day of his sentencing, and he never sees his wife or children ever again. Sad, but probably best for everyone. 18 months plus 12 months of probation is a heck of a lot less than 10 years. That's ridiculous. And since they're so lenient and let him go so soon, why don't they grant him compassionate leave to attend his father's funeral? That's weird. I don't know. So, Gacy immediately violates probation by moving out of town and taking a job as a short order cook. Shortly after, he is charged with, you guessed it, sexual assault. What a dirtbag. Story is that he was driving around late at night looking for a victim when he sees a young man at a bus stop. He tells the teenager he will let him crash at his place and take him back in the morning to catch his bus. False. He sexually assaults this boy and then takes him back to the bus stop. The charges against Gacy are dropped when the kid never shows up for trial. A few months later, he is charged again, this time for flashing a fake badge and forcing a teenage boy to perform sexual acts on him. Once again, charges are dropped. This time because the boy tries to blackmail Gacy, which discredits his entire story and the whole case. Because Gacy moves outside of his parole officer's jurisdiction right after leaving prison, the Iowa Board of Parole doesn't learn of these incidents, and then nearly 8 months later his parole ends. A month after that, the records of his previous criminal convictions are sealed. I don't even know why or how. Yikes. So Gacy's mom helps him buy a house in Cook County, part of the Chicago metro area. He lives at this address until his final arrest in 1978, which means he commits all his murders here and stores them in the crawl space under his house. He continues to be a community leader, helping neighbors by loaning them tools, plowing their snow, all for free. For around 5 years, he hosts annual summer parties, like block parties. All of them are themed. Attendance numbers are in the hundreds. This dude is super popular. He's well known, connected, and well liked by the community. So it's now 1971, and Gacy gets engaged to another lady, an old friend that he briefly dated in high school. They marry the following year. Her and her 2 young daughters move into the home with John, and his mother moves out. Gives mom the boot, I guess, I don't know. This same year, he establishes his own construction company. By mid-1973, he is able to do this work full-time and then quits his second job as a cook. It's now 1975. He tells his wife that he's bisexual and that they're never going to be intimate ever again. Talk about a brick to the face. Just all out of the blue, by the way. Yeah, I'm bi and we're never having sex. Okay. Somewhat surprisingly, she is not sad about this, as at this point she has strong suspicions that he is engaging in lewd behavior with these teenage boys that she sees him bring home night after night to the garage. And then she sees him leave with at all hours. Also, somewhat more disturbingly, because she finds gay pornography and Polaroids of young men bound, and some of them with blood on them. When she starts finding men's wallets with IDs in them, she flips out. I mean, rightfully so, right? And she confronts him. That's a bit dangerous. The wallets with IDs is this really the straw that breaks the camel's back with her, though, and this is when they have this conversation where he admits he's bi and that their sex life is over. His response to her flipping out about the IDs is, it's none of your business. In late 1975, they have a random heated exchange over balancing the checkbook, and she just finally has enough and files for divorce. This really is a welcome move for Gacy, as he now has full access to his house and can do whatever the heck he wants to whomever he wants, whenever, and without having to tiptoe around his wife. He wasn't really tiptoeing, but you know. This same year, his company is booming, expanding rapidly, and by 1978, their annual revenue is $200,000, which that's around between $800,000 and $900,000 today. It's pretty good, right? His neighbors later report noticing a dramatic shift in his behavior after his wife leaves. This is wife number 2, remember. So Gacy later calls these years the cruising years. He commits most of his murders between 1976 and 1978. It's December 1977, and he abducts a 19-year-old at gunpoint from a Chicago bus stop. He takes him to his house, where he tortures and rapes this guy, dunking his head in the bathtub for hours. After the victim begs Gacy to kill him, he releases him, takes him home, threatening him to not tell police, telling him they wouldn't believe him anyway. That's ballsy. Thankfully, this guy does file a police report. The cops interview Gacy, who brushes it off, saying he and the kid have a consensual sexual thing going on, and that he hasn't paid him the money that he promised the kid. The police believe him, surprisingly, and file no charges. A few victims later, he does the same thing, with a slight variation. He drops this guy off in a park, unconscious. The police don't investigate. The victim recalls Gacy's car, so his friends monitor the intersection he remembers them driving through, and the victim's friends eventually spot Gacy's car and follow him. With that, the police issue a warrant, and Gacy is arrested. Private eye type work. Well done. As is typical for Gacy, though, it doesn't stick, and he continues murdering. After over 30 murders, that's a lot. I know I've covered guys that have murdered a lot more people, but 30, I mean, good grief. Jeez. After 30 murders, Gacy finally screws up, as they all do eventually, and he makes a bad call that starts the spiral, which leads to his ultimate demise. The demise is always interesting, how their psychotic rampage begins and eventually ends. Catch part 3 of this psychopath story next week on All Things True Crime. It's truly chilling. Until next time, stay safe.